Well, first of all, I think it's really very timely that the Global Child Forum is taking place in a region where there is so much creativity, such engagement of civil society and corporations, but also that is a region where we have seen very important progress for children, but where many challenges persist. As you know, there are 70 million children growing up in poverty, 5 million children engaged in child labor, 1 million girls that suffer sexual abuse and exploitation. 70% of the kids, in fact, in this region still suffer violence within the home. So we have many challenges that we need to address in the region, but calling attention to the opportunity by organizing this forum and bringing together actors that do not always sit around the same table together, governmental officials, civil society organizations, corporate sector and representatives, international organizations such as the United Nations, really provides an opportunity to think together, keeping the child at the center, rather than continuing our individual and parallel agendas that very often miss the opportunity of bringing our efforts together. And as you know, we have now a very common agenda, the Sustainable Development Agenda, adopted by the United Nations a year and a half ago. And this agenda provides a sense of shared purpose. It's a common path for us to ensure prosperity for all nations and for all people, leaving no child behind. And therefore this forum really offers us an opportunity to make sure that within the region, children are at the center of the concerns, and people feel a very heavy responsibility every day to think about children and to make a difference in their lives. Well, you know, I deal with violence against children. It's still a very hidden and pervasive reality. In many countries, when we ask how many children are affected by violence, governments do not have an answer because statistical information has not been gathered, and also because violence happens within the privacy of the home. It happens through the internet, when you groom a child for sexual purposes, through SMS, which is very difficult to monitor. And children feel very frightened to tell their stories because very often they are considered to be making up something that did not happen. They are considered not to be able to tell the story correctly, so it should not be really believed, and they are dismissed. And even when the story has a very sound basis, even authorities don't follow necessarily to investigate what has happened, who is responsible, and to fight impunity. So it's a very big challenge, and for that reason, for us, it's very important to break the invisibility of violence and to give a voice to children. And one other challenge is that, we look at the child as a citizen of tomorrow. We don't see the child as a partner today, being affected the same way we are all by climate change, by war, by economic recession, by negative impact of decisions by the corporate sector. And we need really to listen to the voice of the child, to be able to understand what it means for them and to find the solutions that work best for them. For instance, if we think about all the risks through information and communication technologies by the use of a mobile phone to bully a child, for instance, we know that they will guide us on what hurts them the most, where does this happen, who is the perpetrator and why, and what are the solutions that will help them heal and overcome the trauma. So joining hands is certainly very, very important. But we have, learned many good lessons on which to build, and therefore I think I always like to emphasize what can be done about this issue. And first of all, of course, we heard this morning that in Brazil there has just been the adoption of a new law to protect all child victims of violence, to prevent them from being re-victimized and to be supported in recovery and reintegration. So legislation plays a very important role. And I think this region can be the first region in the world where every country has a law, an important law, to prohibit all forms of violence against children. That's a big achievement. Second thing we can do, we can gather better data better information to know who is most affected. Is it in the school or in the home, in the streets? What kind of manifestations of violence are affecting children? And how can we prevent it? How to document the best strategies that can help prevent violence from occurring. The third thing is, of course, to work very closely with corporations. And we know that corporations can include in their codes of ethics and practices and procedures important child rights principles. And there are global standards to replicate. But we also need a help to document the good practices and to document the non-good practices, to understand that each and every moment we need to ask ourselves, is this the best for the child? What may be the impact and how can I prevent it? And when we do all of this, the world can really improve and we can celebrate much better lives for children. Well, I think it's a wonderful challenge because we should come to meetings not only to feel very empowered and uplifted by what we hear, by networking with friends and partners, but also to recommit every day. I think one commitment I do, because I think we can all do, is to make sure that every one of us will mobilize 5 additional partners to the same cause. That we will talk about what it means for children to be neglected in policies, to be forgotten in statistical information, to be ignored when the budget is adopted in a country, and to be left deprived of all opportunities the child should have. So mobilizing 5 additional people, to me, is certainly an easy commitment, but I would like to challenge everyone to take it very seriously. But the second thing I will do, in fact, just this week, at the end of this week, I'm going to be meeting religious leaders in the Asia-Pacific region, and I recognize that religious leaders can, like the corporate sector, play a very important role in mobilizing families, communities, children, and advocating for the protection of the rights of the child and the prevention from violence when they speak to the community, when they mobilize support for initiatives in the community. And therefore my second commitment is certainly to transmit this message from the forum and to make sure that they will become as strong allies as we see today in this room. Because the real challenge is to convince those who have not yet been converted, and there are many millions still that we need to reach out to.